In 1903, the Tsarist regime began a wave of pogroms against its Jewish population. Hundreds of Jews were killed in Kishinev alone. 2 years later, on a day forever known as Bloody Sunday, political dissidents demonstrating in front of the Winter Palace were massacred by troops. The events stunned the world.
Now that I had greater access to the American mind, I determined to use whatever ability I possessed to plead the heroic cause of revolutionary Russia.
For the next 2 years, she toured the country drumming up support for her homeland. Her talks on Russia, on the rights of workers, on civil liberties, and even on anarchism drew large, sympathetic crowds.
She found the world was catching up with her. Here were people with an interest in what Emma Goldman had to say because there was this growing awareness of really the social costs of capitalism.
Between the summer of 1916 and the spring of 1917, the mood of the country darkened. The war in Europe was dragging into its 3rd year, a year of military stalemates, trench warfare, and mud. When America entered World War I in April 1917, Goldman saw it as a disaster.
You cannot support any country in war when innocent, as she would see it, men would be slaughtered. Innocent families would have brothers, husbands taken away from them and slaughtered. No, you can't do that. That's the basis of your anarchism.
The idea of nationalism appalled her. She thought nationalism was a big scam. Her point of view was that these wars were a matter of property interests of the upper classes that were sending the working classes out to fight for them.
We're not a liberal society when we go to war. During the Civil War, we weren't. Abraham Lincoln, one of our great presidents, arrested hundreds of people who wrote against the war. And during the First World War, it became one. I mean, it was a combination of vigilantism and official repression.
In June, the Espionage Act went into effect. It decreed stiff fines and prison terms for anyone who obstructed the draft. A year later, the sedition law threatened those who defied the government with expulsion. J. Edgar Hoover, a 23-year-old law clerk enjoying a meteoric rise in the Justice Department, collected information on foreign-born radicals. Hoover was anxious to bring what he called intellectual perverts, like war resistors and anarchists, to justice. He reserved a special loathing for Goldman. Once again, Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman joined forces to organize resistance. Their lectures drew large, contentious crowds. In May 1917, they launched the No Conscription League. It opposed all wars waged by capitalist governments.
We believe that the militarization of America is an evil that far outweighs any good that may come from America's participation in the war. We will resist conscription by every means in our power.
Goldman and Berkman spent 22 months behind bars, much of it tracking events in Russia. The Great October of 1917 had ended 3 centuries of Romanov rule virtually overnight. It was the culmination of a dream by both anarchists and Marxists, and a time to place partisan rivalries aside. Goldman and Berkman put their trust in the Bolsheviks.
There was great hope that the Russian experience will lead to this future idealistic kind of society that she was hoping for.
it seems like a great period of freedom and liberation and hope that the world will be different. If Russia can change, if Russia can democratize, if Russia can give hope to people, then there's hope for any country in the world. And this is at the end of 3.5 years of a very devastating world war, a bloodbath of a world war.
But what they found was devastation.
When she got to Petrograd, I think she found the city to be a total surprise.
The economic conditions there were just absolutely devastating. People were dying of hunger. There was famine, there was disease. Russia had been propelled back into the, medieval period practically by the destruction of the war.
Faced with growing unrest, the Bolsheviks cracked down hard on dissent. Goldman soon confided her disillusionment to a friend who was close to Lenin. Suppression? Persecution? Goldman wrote. Was it for this the revolution had been fought? Her friend arranged for Goldman and Berkman to meet Lenin.
Lenin sat behind a huge desk. We were treated to a volley of questions. When could a social revolution be expected in America? Was the rank and file a fertile soil for boring from within? What about the IWW?
And they argue for free speech. What about free speech? And he looks on them and he treats them rather like adolescents who are learning, about life. And he says, look, that's a very bourgeois notion, he says, roughly. Here we are, surrounded by enemies on all sides. What do you mean, free speech? The White Russians are attacking us, we've got traitors inside, we've got collaborators inside, we've got all sorts of people operating in this country. What do you mean, free speech? You can't have free speech in this revolutionary situation.
I think ultimately she's probably an enlightened fool, in that she intellectualized a revolution she didn't really understand and projected onto Russia her own hopes of liberation, hopes which I suppose were rooted in her own personal trajectories. And that was a pretty foolish thing to do.
For Goldman and Berkman, the decisive moment came on March 16, 1921. That night, the Bolsheviks attacked Kronstadt, a naval base near Petrograd, and the last bastion of anarchist dissent.
Then to hear the cannon suppress the very people who had brought it about, destroy the idea of democracy that they still, until that moment, had hoped might emerge in the revolution, to hear that, to feel it crushed, must, to a certain extent, have destroyed something in themselves.
I think Russia shattered that. That was something very close to her core, to who she was.
In December 1921, after 2 years, Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman left Russia. They vowed to tell the rest of the world of the Bolshevik terror.
She does something that many of us find damned hard to do. She realizes she's been a fool. She realizes she's been wrong. She's realized she's made an error. Not just a casual error, but an error of huge, awful magnitude to support the Bolsheviks. And she turns and she accepts that. She accepts it totally.
Revealing the truth about the Bolshevik regime became a crusade for Goldman and Berkman. Their old enemies on the right praised their analysis of a revolution gone wrong. Old comrades on the left condemned them.